Christmas is often a time of joy, laughter, and cherished memories. But for some, it's a season of terror. From unsettling encounters to chilling supernatural events, these 13 haunting real Christmas stories from Reddit will make you think twice about the holiday spirit. Don't forget to put on your headphones for the best audio experience. And let's begin. Story 1. The Silent Caroler. Redditor, Holiday Haunts. 23. Last Christmas Eve, I was sitting alone in my living room, sipping on hot cocoa and watching the snow fall outside. It was peaceful until I heard singing, soft and melodic, like an old carol. I live on a quiet cul-de-sac, so I was curious who was out so late. When I peeked through the curtains, I saw a figure standing at the edge of my yard. It was a person in an old-fashioned cloak, holding a lantern. I figured it was some kind of reenactment or holiday tradition, but something about the way they stood, so perfectly still, made me uneasy. I called out, but they didn't respond. Then they turned toward me. I couldn't see their face, just the light from the lantern reflecting on the snow. When I blinked, they were gone. No footprints, no sound, just silence. Story 2. The Haunted Gift Redditor. Porcelain Nightmares. When I was 10, my grandmother gave me a porcelain doll for Christmas. It had long, dark hair, glassy eyes, and a beautiful red dress. I hated dolls, but she was so excited to give it to me that I couldn't say no. That night, I placed the doll on my bookshelf and went to sleep. When I woke up, it was sitting on my desk, staring right at me. I thought my mom had moved it, so I put it back on the shelf. The next night, it was on the floor facing the bed. I told my mom, but she swore she hadn't touched it. After Christmas, I packed the doll away in the attic, but every December, it reappears under the tree, even though no one has gone into the attic to get it. Now it's a family tradition. We call it the Haunted Gift, but no one dares throw it away. Story 3. The Shadow in the Hallway. Redditor, Late Night Chills. One Christmas Eve, when I was about 12, I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom. My room was at the end of a long hallway, and as I stepped into the hall, I saw a shadowy figure standing near the living room. I thought it was my dad, sneaking presents under the tree, so I didn't say anything. I just hurried to the bathroom and went back to bed. The next morning, I told my family about seeing Dad in the hallway. But he said he'd been asleep on the couch all night, and no one else was awake. To this day, I have no idea who or what I saw in the hallway that night. Story 4. The Santa That Watched Redditor. Creepy Festive Vibes. My family hired a man to play Santa for our kids' Christmas party last year. He was great, friendly, funny, and the kids loved him. But after the party ended, we noticed him standing outside, just staring at the house. My husband went out to talk to him, but he walked away before we could say anything. That night we kept hearing noises outside, footsteps, faint jingling, even soft humming. When we checked the security cameras the next morning, there was nothing there. We tried to contact the agency that sent him, but they had no record of anyone being assigned to our party that night. Story 5. The Ghost of Christmas, Past Redditor. Haunted Cabin Tales. My family owns a cabin that's been in our family for generations. We don't use it much anymore, but we decided to spend Christmas there a few years ago. On Christmas Eve, I woke up in the middle of the night to see a woman standing near the fireplace. She was dressed in Victorian-style clothing and staring into the flames. When I sat up, she turned to look at me and said, "He never came back." Then, she vanished. The next day, I told my parents about it, and my dad looked pale. He told me the cabin's original owner had lost her husband in a snowstorm on Christmas Eve over 100 years ago. I haven't been back to the cabin since. Story 6. The Knocking on the Window. Redditor, Rural Horrors. When I was a kid, we spent Christmas at my grandparents' house in the countryside. It was an old, creaky house surrounded by woods, and it always felt a little spooky. One Christmas Eve, I woke up to the sound of knocking on my bedroom window. I thought it might be a tree branch, but when I looked outside, there were no trees near the window, just empty snow. The knocking continued every night until we left, but we never figured out what caused it. My grandparents passed away a few years later, and the house has been abandoned ever since. Story 7. The Cursed Ornament Redditor, Antique Abyss. My mom inherited a box of antique Christmas ornaments from my great-aunt, who had always been a little eccentric. The ornaments were beautiful but old, hand-painted glass baubles with intricate designs. The first year we hung them on the tree, things got weird. Lights flickered, ornaments fell off the tree on their own, and we kept hearing faint jingling, even when the room was empty. The final straw was when the tree fell over during Christmas dinner, twice. We buried the ornaments in the backyard after that. The strange activity stopped, but every Christmas, we hear faint jingling coming from the garden. Story 8. The Christmas Train. Redditor, lost tracks forever. Every Christmas Eve, my family would hear the sound of a train whistle in the distance, even though we lived miles away from any tracks. One year, I decided to investigate. I followed the sound through the woods near our house and found a set of rusted, overgrown train tracks. As I walked along them, I saw an old, decaying train car sitting in the middle of the woods. When I got closer, I heard faint laughter and the sound of Christmas music coming from inside. I ran back home and never went near those tracks again. Story 9. The Whispering Elf Redditor, Elf on the Creep. My parents got me an elf on the shelf when I was 8. I thought it was fun, until I started hearing whispers coming from it at night. At first I thought it was my imagination, but one night I heard it clearly. A faint, raspy voice saying, "I'm watching you." I told my parents, but they didn't believe me. That night, I hid the elf in the basement. The next morning, it was back on the shelf, smiling at me. Story 10. The Face in the Frost. Redditor, Frosted Fears. One Christmas morning, I woke up early and looked out my frosted window to see a face staring back at me. It was pale, with hollow eyes and a twisted grin. I screamed and ran to get my parents, but when we returned, the face was gone. There were no footprints in the snow outside, but handprints were smeared on the glass. Story 11. The Christmas Morning Call. Redditor, Haunted by Grandma. On Christmas morning, my phone rang. When I looked at the caller ID, it was my grandmother's number, but she had passed away the year before. I answered, and a familiar voice said, "Merry Christmas," before the line went dead. I tried calling the number back, but it was disconnected. To this day, I don't know if it was a glitch or something else. Story 12. The Empty Stocking Redditor, Ghostly Traditions. In our family, we hang stockings for everyone, even our deceased loved ones, as a tribute. One year, my uncle's stocking, which had been empty the night before, was filled with old coins on Christmas morning. No one in the family had put them there, and the coins were from the 1930s, the same decade my uncle was born. Story 13. The Bells in the Attic Redditor, Jingle Hells. On Christmas Eve, my husband and I were sitting by the fire when we heard the faint sound of bells jingling. It seemed to be coming from the attic. We ignored it at first, thinking it was just the wind, but the bells kept ringing throughout the night. The next morning, we went up to the attic to investigate. In the corner of the room, we found a dusty box labeled Christmas. Inside was a set of old sleigh bells that neither of us had ever seen before. And there you have it, 13 haunting real Christmas stories from Reddit. As you prepare for the holidays, remember, not every Christmas spirit is jolly. If you enjoyed these tales, be sure to like, subscribe, and join me next time for more spine-tingling stories. This is the Tales Keeper wishing you a hauntingly memorable holiday season.